Hey, good morning, Drivetime. Welcome back. As always, I'm David Drum, and I'm going to do something a little different today. Normally, we have another speaker, and sometimes, it's just me, but I think this is the first time that I'm specifically going to reference a message from church. A couple weeks ago, if you're a part of Cape Christian, you watched Pastor Dennis Gingrich give out the final installment to our Dude Be Kind series. And I'm going to put the link to the video in the description so you can go back and watch it, because it really is going to give a lot of context to what I talk about today. So kind of a behind the scenes peek is we don't always discuss what is going on in church, what's going on at CapeMEN, and what's going on in Drivetime. There's some different things going on. And I was actually preparing to speak on the parable of the Good Samaritan at an upcoming men's breakfast for CapeMEN, not knowing that Pastor Dennis was going to use the parable of the Good Samaritan in his message just a couple weeks ago. And while I can do something else for breakfast, as I listened to him talk and made some of the same points that I would have made, I just thought there's a couple of things I wanted to add. There's more conversation, because like he says, it's such a familiar story to us. And I think that familiarity with it causes us to just glance over it, and we miss how significant of a story this was to the people who would have heard it when Jesus told it the very first time. And I want to go back and just talk through some of those points so that maybe we can get the value. And then in the end, what I'll tell you is literally there's a 2-letter word that when I understood the context of it, when I understand the way it was written in the original text, it just blew my mind, and it changed the way I look at the story forever. So the parable of the Good Samaritan appears in Luke chapter 10, and it's very short. It's verses 25 through 37. You can go back and read that. And again, I invite you to go back and watch Pastor Dennis's message on it, because it's fantastic, and I enjoyed it. So for those of you who are familiar with it, you know that there's this traveler that is going from Jerusalem to Jericho, and that the road itself is notoriously dangerous. So this man gets robbed, and not just robbed, he's just beaten half to death, and he's stripped naked. So the crime itself goes beyond just the robbery. There's a nature of it just degrades him as a human to leave him not only injured but naked on the side of the road, completely exposed, and then he's alone. So, we can only guess that if this man had any thoughts going through his head, it was probably a prayer or a hope that someone would come and help him. Well, as the story goes, we know that 3 men cross his path. 3 men on the same perilous journey that he's on come into the picture. Now, all 3 of these men are given a title. You have a priest, you have a Levite who's kind of a temple assistant, and you have a Samaritan. So all of these titles come with a presumption of worth and what their actions would be. And so when you look at that, their worth, they were either holy or hated, respected or despised. There was no middle ground between these 3 men. See, the 2 men who had standing in the community and standing in the temple and had just this presumption that they would have cared enough about their fellow man to stop and render aid, well, they just passed by. They didn't just pass by, they actually crossed the road to be further away, to not be affected by this man's condition. And Jesus is very clear with his words that they saw him. This isn't an instance where they didn't notice and they were looking in other direction. Jesus' telling of the story makes it clear that the men saw him, and their reaction to him was one of whether apathy or just self-concern, they went on their way. Now, the third man to encounter him was the despised man, the hated man. He's a Samaritan. Well, he doesn't do what the original audience would have expected him to do. He went to the man. So here's the thing. I know when I watch movies, I tend to see myself in the role of the character I identify with or that I like the most. So I want to do that with us this morning. So think of it this way. You're the Samaritan. And I just want to mentally prep you for that. See, you grew up in a culture that says that Jews hate you and that you should hate them back. That you're unworthy, and you've probably even been called subhuman. And you're on a trip right now where you're probably definitely going to encounter people who hate you just because of where you were born. See, now you're kind of mentally prepared to be the Samaritan. So you see this man on the side of the road, beaten, bloodied, alone. See, again, when we look at the way Jesus tells the story, there's no indication that you pause, that you're concerned for yourself, or that you weighed the pros and cons. You just felt compassion, and then you acted on it. The wording doesn't imply that you had some civic compulsion or that you were duty bound to do anything for this man. In fact, it says that you had compassion on him and felt pity for him. And that's what caused you to cross these social and ethnic boundaries that your whole life have been told, don't go there. So as the story goes, you as the Samaritan, you use your time and your resources and even your money to care for this man that you've never met, who likely, if he were awake, wouldn't give you the time of day. So 10 minutes ago, you were riding a donkey on your journey. But now you've loaded this injured man on your donkey and you're walking beside him. And you're probably not walking as fast as you could because you want to make sure to steady the man on the donkey to not injure him further. You get him to an inn, you prepay for his care and his lodging, and even promise to come back and check on him and pay for anything else if it's needed. Well, so let's pause there for a second and think about it. How many of us really want to be the Samaritan at this point? I mean, I know we want to say that, yeah, I want to be the Samaritan. But that means we have to put aside our to-do lists, our pace of life, and our schedules. I mean, I really want to, but, I got this thing I have to do. So while you're still chewing on that part, the parable continues. And all of this is set in the context where an expert in law was trying to test Jesus and ultimately asks him a question of who is my neighbor, in the sense of trying to limit who he had to care for. And that's when Jesus tells the story of the Good Samaritan. Well, as the story winds out with the Samaritan's act of kindness, multiple acts of kindness, actually, Jesus asks this expert who treated the man as his neighbor. And the expert has to say, well, the one who showed him mercy. Now, this is the part that really affected me. See, Jesus just says to him, well, go and do likewise. And, there's obviously some specific instruction there, like go and do likewise. But that two-letter word, do, well, when you look at the text that was originally written, the words that were originally used. Do and likewise combine into a single word. And I'm going to butcher it here, but it's hodopio, which literally means make a path. Now, why is that significant? Well, what are paths used for? Well, they're used for a couple of things. Well, they're used repeatedly. And they're also used to show others the way to go. So if you take that meaning and you place it into Jesus' words of go and do likewise, he's telling us, go and show others the way. And then do it again. It's not a one-time act, guys. This isn't one thing that we can do. This is the thing we should do every day. In the end, understanding the context that this was written in and the people that Jesus would have been talking to, it would have been scandalous. It's the reason why so many people hated him, but it's also the reason so many people loved and followed him. Guys, here's my challenge to you this week. First, I want you to think about this. We're all doing something. We're all making pathways. We're showing our friends, our families, and our kids which way to go and how to do it repeatedly. So the challenge this week, the thing that we can do to get 1% better, well, evaluate that path. Are we doing the things that we want our kids to do? Are we doing the things that we want our family to do? Are we actually doing the things that we feel called to do? Gentlemen, I hope the context and the meaning behind this story help challenge and convict you the way that it has me. And I will see you again right here next week for another episode of Drivetime.